I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Happy Tuesday, guys. Welcome back. I hope you had a great weekend and welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, and you can catch me here Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, and Twitter. I'm going to get started with my special guest tonight. Hank, if you are ready, if you can give me a thumbs up. All right. Let me go ahead and bring you on stream. Welcome.
Well, hello. How are you?
I am doing great. Let me go ahead and introduce you to everyone. So my special guest tonight is Hank. He teaches journalism as an adjunct faculty member at Rutgers University. He's also on the executive board of the Adjunct Faculty Union. Hank, so much happening at Rutgers University these past couple of days. I've been paying very close attention to this.
Oh, yeah, no, it's been a busy couple of days. And as you could probably hear in my voice at this point, we declared a strike on Sunday night. We hit the picket lines Monday morning, and we've been growing those picket lines over the last 2 days. So it's been pretty exciting, pretty invigorating, and exhausting couple of days.
I understand. I totally understand. So I've worked in higher ed for approximately like 11 years. I'm very familiar with some of these issues that employees have to go through, whether it's adjunct faculty or staff. Adjunct is a little bit different. And I want to start off with that first so that people understand what adjunct faculty actually do. And it's not so much that they're not faculty, they are faculty, but they actually usually do not receive the same type of benefits that a tenure track faculty member will get, or a lecturer per se. Can you describe to everyone what is the difference between adjunct faculty and a tenure track faculty?
Yeah, we as an adjunct, we teach part-time. We are considered the old model of the adjunct, maybe the easiest way to deal with this, was somebody who was coming in from the business world. Let's say in my profession as a journalist, I might come in, teach a class, let's say on news writing, and then go back out and do my reporting or do my editing, at my day job. That was early on, that was a real, I think a really necessary addition to the university model. What's happened though is, and we did that without benefits, with low pay, because it was just extra, right? We did it because we liked it. We did it because we made a couple of extra dollars, whatever it was. What's happened though is that the modern university, higher education, has changed dramatically. And we've gone from institutions that were predominantly staffed by tenure or tenure track faculty to a variety of different contingent faculty members. Adjuncts are probably the most vulnerable. We are reappointed on a semester by semester basis. We never know how many classes we're going to teach. We generally get paid lower on a per credit basis than somebody who is even a non-tenured full-time member. We don't get health care. That's the big difference. A tenure track person has long-term protections, usually gets paid a lot more. Many adjuncts have the same degrees as your regular full-time, tenure people. So that's the difference, basically.
Right. And I want people to understand that. I'm glad you mentioned the point there about degrees, because I don't want people to think that if someone's adjunct faculty, that means that they may not have as much education. That's not necessarily the case. Some adjunct faculty members that I've worked with, they have PhDs, just like the tenure track faculty have PhDs. So I think what I've noticed over the years, though, I've noticed some of the universities are actually hiring more adjunct faculty because the tenure track is very limited. And I noticed they're not focusing as much of their attention on that. And from a business model mindset, the idea is that we'll hire more adjunct faculty because it's cheaper for the university to do so. And we don't have to give them the full set of benefits. But I feel that everybody should have those same benefits. And I think that's a big part of the problem. Now, in reference to this particular strike, first and foremost, I want people to understand that Rutgers University is the largest university in New Jersey. So there are 3 different campuses. I believe all 3 of those campuses are on strike. Last I checked, it was over 9,000 people.
Yes, yeah, we're by far the largest university in New Jersey. We're the flagship public education, flagship public college, public university. We're considered a major research institution. The university is now in the Big Ten as a sports conference. It is for a variety of reasons. I mean, New Jersey is a bigger state than people realize. So Rutgers as a single institution is among the top 5 or 10 universities around the country size-wise, which, to be honest, I only found this out recently. So, we're pretty big. And what we have done is a little bit different, I think, than what other unions have done at this point, because we have walked out. All classes of faculty have walked out. And this is the first time I think that's happening at a major university, where graduate workers and adjunct faculty and full-time faculty are marching on the picket line together, organizing together, fighting together, negotiating together. So we're really trying to change things.
What are some of the benefits that you're fighting for? From what I understand, there was a contract, or there's supposed to be a contract negotiation. Seems like this was supposed to be done last year or something like that, but that has not happened. What are some of the benefits that you're fighting for?
So our contract expired on June 30th. We've been in initially intermittent negotiations since then. Negotiations have picked up, have been more frequent. Now they're almost around the clock. The governor stepped in on Sunday, just before the strike started. So our negotiators are in Trenton, meeting in his offices. The governor wants to see this end as quickly as possible. We adjuncts are asking for 3, I won't call them basic, but they're the 3 underlying demands that we have. The first one is equal pay for equal work. We want to be paid on the same prorated basis, the same, per credit basis, if you will, as full-timers. We're not asking to get the same exact pay, because we're not going to work the same hours. So we want to be paid commensurate with the job that we're doing. As I said, I don't know if I said this before, but we're paid probably about 60%, 50 to 60% of what a full-timer, even a non-tenure tracked full-timer, is getting to do largely the same job. And we understand that that many non-tenure track full-timers have other responsibilities. But that's factored in. Those non-tenure track professors have maybe administrative duties, maybe some other stuff, and that's accounted for in their course load. And we understand that they get they get credit disposition for that. And we're asking just that if we're teaching the equivalent of 10 hours a week, and they're working 40 hours a week on teaching and other things, well, we want to get 1/4 of their salary, because we're doing the same work for a smaller period of time. So that's a big one. And we think that'll help address some of the major issues that exist. It'll make, the adjunctification of the university a little bit less attractive if we're a little bit more expensive, right? But that can really only happen if we have job security. And that, to me, that may be more important in some ways than full equal pay. I don't know. I mean, I think that both of those are very important. We are reappointed on a semester to semester basis. I reapply for my job every single semester. I get a background check every single semester. I have to wait for a job. I have to wait for a letter of appointment even after I've been offered the job. I can prep a course, have the course ready to go, and then lose the course because of enrollment. And that makes planning my life out really difficult. We don't know. 1 year a certain amount of money is coming in, the next year it's going to be less. So it's a real precarious lifestyle that we're forced into. Our third demand is healthcare, access to healthcare. We're the only class of employee, well, one of two classes of employees at the university that are not eligible for any kind of healthcare through the university. So we're all on the ACA. The ACA was useful. The ACA addressed a particular need, but it's expensive. And there's an option. We want in the state system basically. So
you're all in the Affordable Care Act?
Well, I mean, a lot of us are lucky enough. I'm lucky enough, for instance, that my wife has a really stable, well-paying job that has good health care. So we're on her plan. So I don't have to worry about it, but it does put a lot of pressure on her because it means that, she has to worry about her job, and her job is healthcare for us. If something were to happen on that end, there's nothing for me to fall back on. And there's, but that admittedly is, I think, an issue that's larger than just at the universities. I mean, we could have the conversation about why we need single payer, but what we want right now is to have the university provide us with healthcare and to work with us at the state level to kind of enable legislation to allow certain kinds of things to happen for us on the healthcare front. So those are the big ones.
I want to explain to people a couple examples. I took a digital photography class when I worked at BU, and my professor was adjunct professor. So he worked at the Boston Globe part-time, and he worked at the university to teach that photography class as an adjunct faculty member. And he wasn't guaranteed to have a class to teach the next semester. So he taught us that fall. And then when the spring came around, I received an email saying that the spring course will be canceled because there weren't enough students that were enrolled for that course. So he didn't have that extra money coming in for the spring. So it's true. Like, they don't have like this year assignment where you're going to be teaching in the fall and the spring. It's not guaranteed. The reason why some people may do adjunct faculty work is to get the experience, number one. Tenure track positions are far and few. And I think in the next couple of years, I could see tenure going away. And those faculty searches for those tenure positions are very, very competitive. So if you have someone that has that experience, they're more likely to push for them than someone that may not have it, right? So that's why some people do it to get the experience. Some people do it to get, extra income. But the thing is I feel like I'm noticing, in reference to the president, because this came out, I don't want people to put the blame on the workers. And that's what's been happening these past couple of strikes that I've seen from different employees that I've interviewed, because now the president of Rutgers University is considering actually taking legal action. Now, apparently the president, Jonathan Holloway, met with Governor Phil Murphy and has decided to hold off on that, at least for now. But I want to read this piece here because this is very concerning in reference to people going on strike. It says, Rutgers University President Jonathan Holloway won't rule out the possibility of legal action to block the ongoing strike from Rutgers University faculty unions. In a Monday evening email addressed to members of the Rutgers community, Holloway said that the university will have no choice but to take legal action if there is no movement towards an agreement. And so in comes Governor Phil Murphy, who said he actually intervened and said that earlier to delay Rutgers from taking legal action to block the 3 unions from their ongoing strike. But if it wasn't for that intervention from the governor, they were ready to penalize the workers here when all they're asking for are proper benefits. And I don't think that something like this should even be allowed. Now, from what I understand as well, let me know, Hank, the classes are continuing, correct?
Well, there are some classes that are continuing. For instance, I'm on the picket line. My classes are have been canceled going forward until this is settled. Then there are some there are some professors who are teaching. There are professors on campus who are opposed to the strike, who are teaching. We are trying to address that, just by talking with them and trying to continue to try to win them onto our side. We've asked that the professors who are teaching not penalize students who because of their they believe in their conscience that crossing a picket line is wrong, that they shouldn't be penalized for acting in their conscience. So it's a difficult issue because we don't want to create a punitive atmosphere on campus. We're going to eventually all be back teaching, and so we don't want to get into a situation where the word scab is getting tossed around and you have all of that. So there are some classes, but a lot of them have in fact been canceled. The campus bus system has been basically running empty buses for the last 2 days. So students aren't going in the New Brunswick campus, which is where I teach. It's really 5 separate campuses. And students take a bus system to kind of go from campus to campus. So, because some campuses are engineering and science, and then other campuses are business. Other campuses, may focus on other things. So if they have a chemistry class and then they have to do a freshman writing class, they may have to bounce from campus to campus. So they take the buses. Yep. So those buses have been empty. We see them pass by us while we're on the picket line, and you can see it's like, and that's unusual. Rutgers buses are famous for being overcrowded. So to see them running empty is just an amazing sight. Tells us that a lot of people are either taking a chance to kind of have a mid-semester vacation, or they're on the line with us. But we've had hundreds upon students come out and picket with us. So we think that that's actually what's going on. It's much more of their support. But yeah, the argument we made back to Holloway about the injunction, and that letter was tame compared to some of the other stuff that he has said. What he says is he wants to file an injunction. In New Jersey, there's no legislation that prevents public workers from striking. Technically, we're public workers. And there's nothing in the state constitution that does that, but there is common law precedence that dates back to the late 60s, a time of turbulence, that would allows a judge to intervene if asked, and put an injunction against the strike to shut it down. And then that's the first step. Then we would have to either abide by it, or we could challenge it, or we could disregard it. And then there's a series of potential penalties. We asked Holloway to reconsider, and a group of historians, I think it was about 130 historians of all kinds, many African American historians. Holloway's his academic job was to be he would teach civil rights history and the history of labor in the civil rights movement. So we've always thought of it as being ironic that here he is acting in the way, acting to shut down a strike, which is, seems to contradict the scholarship that he's done. So these historians have kind of stepped up. They signed a letter, some famous ones, some less famous ones, and that was sent to Holloway, I guess, last week, asking him to back off that claim.
And I want to add for people who are not aware, because I've complained about this before on the show. Some of these presidents of these universities are making a lot of money. When I worked at BU, and this is public information, by the way, Massachusetts actually puts out this statement every year in the Boston Globe, and it shows you how much these university presidents are making at each college in Massachusetts. And that was actually how I found out the president of Boston University was making over $2 million a year.
Wow.
And just keep in mind, for those who are not aware, the president of the university doesn't have to pay for his house. The university pays for it. So he's just, I don't know what he's doing with that money, but he gets $2 million a year, right? He actually makes more than the president of Harvard University. Some people don't realize that. But I think it's important for people to understand it's not that these universities don't have the money. They have the money, but they distribute it in such a way that there are a lot of people at the bottom, as you can see, like for the adjunct faculty, not giving them these proper benefits. And then there are staff employees too that are also paid very little, so that they can pay more to the presidents and to some of the deans at these universities. Now, I want to ask, this is a really good question here from Patrick. How can I make this happen at my university? Quick question, Hank. Did you have the union before the strike started? Did you already have a union present for adjunct faculty at Rutgers?
Yeah, but my understanding, because I joined the union, I've been a member of the union since I started teaching about 10 years ago, but I became active about 2 years ago. My understanding is that the union has been in place probably since 1989, I believe. And the full-time union goes back to probably the 70s.
Okay.
And there are about 20 unions on at Rutgers. Total.
Okay, well, that's awesome. Patrick, if your university does not have a union, I think the first step would be starting a union. For sure.
You gotta talk to if you're a faculty member, talk to other faculty members. If you're a student, start agitating.
Have you noticed, Hank, too, that some of the grad students at the universities have been forming unions as well?
Yeah, at Rutgers, they are members of the full-time union, and they have a caucus within that union. But I know there have been several attempts to found new grad unions, even in the last few months. I think I want to say NYU is the latest to seek a grad union. They had some other stuff come up before that, so I'm not sure if it's NYU, if I remember, but Michigan grads are on strike. There's been an effort to form a grad union at Northwestern, because I've talked to some of them. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of grad unions because grad workers they get the worst of everything, because the university tries to say, well, you're not workers, you're students. But they do a lot of the research. They will do a lot of the research. The science grad workers do a lot of the research in the labs. They're research assistants for others. In the humanities, most of the grad union, the graduate students are teaching classes. They're teaching a lot of classes, especially intro classes around the university. So they're workers. They're workers who, only recently, get tuition remission and that kind of thing. But at Rutgers, they make somewhere between $25,000 and $30,000 a year to live in New Jersey. I don't know where most of your listeners are from, but you might get this. So the cost of living in New Jersey is comparable to the cost of living in Massachusetts or Connecticut. So, it's a lot. I mean, if you're only making $25,000 a year and you live in a place where the sustainability wage is $45,000 or living wage is $45,000, what are you doing? You're living hand to mouth. So
that's right. Grad students really do get like the brunt end of it. I mean, in Massachusetts, some of the PhD students, even at some of the elite schools like Harvard and MIT, I worked at MIT as well. They're paying these students like $35,000 a year. That's nothing here in Boston, by the way. Like that is nothing. Like you're going to need a lot of roommates. So it's a way for the university to have cheap labor. They need someone to do the research in these labs. They need someone to teach some of these courses. So if you went to college and at some point you had a TA, that was a grad student, a teaching assistant. So yeah, they really do get the brunt end of it. What happens if there isn't an agreement reached, or do you think there will be an agreement reached relatively soon?
I've been predicting no, but I can't really say. We were far apart. There's been negotiations have been ongoing for the last couple of days, and I haven't had an official update yet today, so I don't know what may have actually happened today. If you asked me this morning, I would tell you that we would probably still be out next week, pending action by the governor. By the college president. So, but I don't know. I mean, we could reach something. And anything is possible, I guess. But we're prepared to stay out as long as it takes to win our core demands. There are always elements of the what you're asking for that you're willing to cut loose, but the core demands are key. And we are really lucky. We have support from the full timers. They've centered our demands and the grad demands. They could have easily have just settled for a few percentage increase in their salary and walked away from us, but they're pushing us to the forefront. And our hope is to use this kind of contract to reverse the adjunctification of higher ed. We've told President Holloway, this is the chance for you to lead. You have a chance to be a part of an historic remaking of what higher ed looks like, returning it to its mission of education and kind of cutting out the the corporatist elements. Let's get back to what we're supposed to be doing best, which is teaching and research.
That's right. Has the president, has he met with the union at all or tried to meet with the union?
Not that I know of. I mean, he hasn't been to bargaining, and he hasn't been out to the picket line, obviously. What I would hope that he would meet with us at some point. I mean, he comes to the university senate, and that's pretty much the extent of him talking with faculty, I think, in a lot of respects.
Okay. I have to say, thank you so much for saying this, Casey. # Workers Strike Back. There is a new organization that started this year called Workers Strike Back. And this is what they're doing. They're supporting and elevating people like yourself, people who are going on strike that are pushing back against, the employer apparatus, so to speak. And this is something I can let them know about this as well. They may already know, but if not, I can still push it forward to them as well, because this is like their big thing to help the workers and things like that. I want people to understand, like, these are not easy positions to replace. Like, it was one thing when the Starbucks workers went on strike and the company decided we're either going to close down that location or we're going to bring in people and train them really quickly and teach them how to do it. That's different. It's not that easy just to find someone off the street and say, can you come in and teach this journalism class for this many hours?
Yeah, right.
Like, it's not that simple. Can you teach economics for like the rest of this semester? And that's another thing too. The semester pretty soon is coming to an end.
Yeah, we have 3 weeks left. So
that
there's an urgency. There's definitely an urgency.
Yeah.
And we're hoping that urgency makes them feel like they need to move quickly. They need to start listening to us. They need to start respecting us and acknowledging that the kinds of things that we're asking for are the kinds of things that human beings in general ask for and should have.
And deserve. It's very key. What do you think about the idea? Because I know one of the things that are part of the demands is the healthcare issue. Do you think that this could push the university to just permanently go ahead and add adjunct faculty onto the same healthcare benefit as the full-time tenure faculty members?
We would like that. part of I think there are some legal impediments. Apparently, there are things they can do in the interim. The university would have to work with us to change some state laws and expand access to, because I believe I'm not in negotiations now, but I believe the healthcare plan is the state plan that most university employees get, and so adjuncts nowhere in the state are eligible for it. So we would have to we'd have to get the university to work with us and make some changes in that.
I hear you.
Part of what we're asking for is that commitment, not just okay, we'll do it, but like a hard commitment. So,
is there a mutual aid fund set up for you guys? Like, how can people support you while you're on strike?
There is. I don't have the link. I should have the link in front of me. There is a strike fund that we have created. So if they want to, they can go to. I'm still here. I don't. You should be able to see me.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And then Eric, we can put that in the chat so that people can support.
Yes, if you go to the main union website, which is Rutgers AAUP.org. Let me come back. Yes, if you go to Rutgers AAUP.org, there are a series of links, including a link to our strike fund.
Okay.
And yeah, we could use, we're the only, basically the only requirement we have, we're asking people to apply for it when they need it. We're not opening up applications till we know if we've been denied pay for any of the time that we're out, and they have to be on the picket line. Basically, so there are a lot of online workers. We have a lot of online people who are doing their online strike. So they've canceled their classes, and they are doing things like providing remote translation, data sorting, the other stuff that I never realized how much work went into planning a strike of this, especially of this size, getting food or whatever. So we have our even our online faculty are able to participate and they're serving important roles. And I think they deserve to get a shout out as well. You see us on the picket line, but one of my board colleagues lives in Mexico City. He teaches at Rutgers from Mexico City, and he's been doing a lot of stuff for us, remotely. So anything that they can do, there are a lot of people teach remotely. So
I hear you. I totally hear you. Well, Hank, thank you so much for coming on. And all I have to say is good luck. Keep fighting there. They'll bend or cave at some point.
I keep saying, I don't say when we win. I keep saying, I don't say if we win, I say when we win. And
Awesome.
We're going to win this. So thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Bye.
See ya.
All right, guys. Rutgers University strike. Check them out on Twitter as well. They're putting up-to-date information on their Twitter page about the strike. Make sure you follow them. If you can support, use that link that Eric put in the chat to donate to help them stay on strike, because screw the university president and all of that. Okay. Screw that. Okay. Want to go ahead really quick. Shout out Sabby patrons. I also want to get to some of the comments here in the chat, and then we will go on to our stories for the rest of the evening. And welcome back, guys. Again, I hope you had a great weekend. All right. Quick shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you so much for your support. If you're interested in being a patron, I have 5 categories: members, Sabbies, Sabsters, Sabinators, and of course, the ultimate. All of their names are listed here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. You guys really help me out here. And I want to give a special shout out to a new Sabby patron, Saul Alanis. Whoop, whoop. Over here, we call them newbies. So welcome, Saul. Welcome. When I saw that name, I thought about Saul Goodman. It's just Breaking Bad. Better Call Saul. That's what I thought about when I saw that name. Okie doke. Let's go ahead and get that comment on Rockfin first, Eric, and then I'll go to the ones that are starred on YouTube. Doop, 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 doop. All right. Thank you so much for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. New Jersey fair market rent for a 2-bedroom apartment is $1,628. In order to afford this level of rent and utilities without paying more than 30% of income on housing, a household must earn $5,428 monthly or $65,137 a year. Assuming a 40-hour work week at 52 weeks yearly, this level of income translates into an hourly housing wage of $31.32 for Jersey City, $37.92 for Middlesex, Somerset, Hunterdon, and $35.60 for Bergen, Passaic. Yeah, Bergen/Passaic. Yeah, these are really important numbers for people to know, especially when we're arguing with people about like a living wage. This is a living wage, not a minimum wage. So I think that's important for people to see. Thank you so much for the super chat, Roger. Oops, my bad. Forget that last comment. Okay, never mind. Sebastian, adjunct professor equals Uber driver of colleges. There you go. There you go. Thank you so much for the super chat, Andrew. Thank you, Sabby. You are welcome. Andrew was the one who told me about the story. I got an email from Andrew over the weekend. So thank you. Perfect says, I was adjunct faculty, $300 per month to teach a college course. You guys hear that? They don't pay them much. Jay says, adjunct professors get treated like trash. I quietly quit my position last year after 11 years of being overworked and underpaid. That's right. Lose. RFK Jr.'s son fought for the what? RFK Jr.'s son fought for the Nazis in Ukraine. We're going to get into that. He talks about that. So we're going to get into that. You jumped ahead of me, Lose. Are college presidents get free housing? LMAO. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. JB's here. Sabby, I talked about this in regards to Stanford University on my channel. The Stanford graduate students formed a union because of the manipulation from the university. I love seeing like more of this. This needs to happen all across this country. Hence, it gives me flashbacks, flashbacks of my days in higher ed. So I want to see this continue. Thank you for the super chat. Laugh. People underestimate JFK. I think you mean RFK Jr. RFK, he is not afraid of the Dem Party or the deep state. Unlike Bernie, RFK has balls. Well, there is a poll there. So you guys go ahead and take that poll. I'm curious to see the results. I did glance at it before I went live, but these things always change after I go live. They always do. Shout out to Kid from Hardlands Media. What's up, Kid? Whoop, 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 whoop. All right, let's get into tonight's stories. Let me go ahead and pull up that lovely thumbnail for you. Tonight, we are discussing Jimmy Dore wake up call. What is Jimmy Dore talking about and why is he trying to wake the people up? This is a very important discussion, and I think everyone needs to hear this message. We're also going to discuss Macron. Macron says he will not follow. Macron and Taiwan and China, what is that all about? And should you take Macron seriously, considering the fact that he is having difficulty controlling his own country right now? We're also going to discuss Joe Biden versus RFK Jr. We have key clips that I want you to look at tonight. Joe Biden did announce, not on purpose, but it came out recently that he does intend to run again. So we got a lot to talk about there because the polls don't favor that at all. And of course, Hank was just here to talk about the Rutgers University strike, which again, please help them out if you can, guys. We got to like empower the workers. Joe Biden, it kind of slipped up during an interview with Al Roker that he does intend to run for 2024. Now, he has not made a public announcement that was planned, so to speak, but during this on-the-ground interview, that did come out, and it made me think about some things. It made me think about the fact that the polls don't support that. The majority of Democrat voters do not want Joe Biden to run again. Then you also have the fact that you have Marianne Williamson, who's entered this race. We've talked enough about that. I'm not going to talk about that again. I'm sorry. But then we have RFK Jr., who recently has technically didn't formally announce, but the cat got out the bag because the FEC posted that he already had filed the paperwork, and then it went from there, and it spread like wildfire. But we're going to make a comparison here. Now, RFK Jr. is running through the Democratic Party, and that is one piece where I would push back. I would tell him to run as an independent or as a third party candidate, but he's running through the Democratic Party, and he is really someone that I can see if I'm thinking about some like his positions on things. He's against the authoritarian state. He was against the mandates, right? He criticizes the government, these government agencies. He is someone that I could see having crossover appeal. I could see him winning independence. I could actually see some people on the right choosing to vote for him. And I've actually had people already tell me that. But what do you guys think? Would you vote for him? That's the poll. Would you vote for him as a Democrat? Or would you only vote for him if he runs third party or independent? Or I believe the other option was no, regardless. And then the last one was, dude, I don't know. Let's get into Biden's slip of the tongue here, where he lets people know that he is running again. And then there's a panel here. And I want you to hear what they're saying about Joe Biden, because this is funny to me. This is comical at best. Let's get into this.
Are you saying that you would be taking part in our upcoming election in 2024?
Well, I'll either be rolling an egg or being the guy who's pushing them out.
Come on, help a brother out. Make some news for me.
Well, I plan on running now, but we're not prepared to announce it yet.
Welcome back.
But he did. In a way, he did.
That was President Biden talking about his 2024 plans to our new chief White House correspondent, Al Roker, this morning at the White House ahead of the annual Easter egg roll. Al did an incredible job. That answer essentially confirms NBC's latest reporting that the final touches are being put on the president's reelection operation. But with no expected primary challenger and the oxygen on the Republican side being sucked up by former President Trump's legal issues, there's really little urgency at the White House to set a launch date. Top Biden ally Congressman Jim Clyburn tells NBC, quote, the longer Biden can go without being an announced candidate, the better off he is.
What does that tell you, ladies and gentlemen? The statement here from Jim Clyburn, the longer he waits, the better off he is. That tells you just how weak Joe Biden is as a candidate and how other Democrats, establishment Democrats, are trying to help him. They are really trying to lift Joe Biden up and help him stand. They're really trying. They're really trying here. You should not have to work that hard to help someone if they are a viable candidate. They should be able to speak on their own, and they should be able to be their own champion. But everybody is coming in and they're trying to prop Joe Biden up because they know he is incredibly weak. And even to the point where Clyburn would make a statement like this, oh, let's let him wait longer because it'll be better for him. That's embarrassing. It is embarrassing for this country that we all know just how weak Joe Biden is. We know that Joe Biden is experiencing some type of cognitive decline. It is apparent. And they are still trying to push Crime Bill Joe. Embarrassing.
Joining me now on set is Nicholas Wu, congressional reporter for Politico, Democratic strategist and NBC News political analyst Juanita Tolliver, and Sarah Chamberlain, president and CEO of the Republican Main Street Partnership. Thank you so much to all of you for being here to start us off on this very busy Monday. Nicholas, let me start with you. First of all, what did you make of the president's comments there? It sounds like he's made up his mind, but we know he's not in a rush. He doesn't really need to be, right?
Well, we got some news out of the Easter egg roll.
Yeah.
But I think,
the best days.
exactly. But I think the interesting thing here is quite how much Biden really is biding his time before announcing his reelection. I mean, right now, he can just sit back and do the work of governing while, you see, while there are all these negative headlines about Trump in the news, his legal woes, and, all the other Republicans duking it out. Whereas, Biden, he, at the end of the day, he's the incumbent, right? Like, yes, there are certain fundraising deadlines that he'll need to deal with if he wants to run for, if it makes it official for reelection. But, like, he can still draw on an incredibly large network and all the advantages of incumbency.
Juanita.
Let's talk about something that he just mentioned here that I think is important. Notice he said, number one, Joe Biden is the incumbent. So in his mind, he doesn't need to try as hard. How'd that work out for George H.W. Bush? He was the incumbent too. I don't think he felt that he needed to try that hard. Bill Clinton came in and won, right? How'd that work out for Donald Trump in 2020? He was also the incumbent. Biden came in and won, right? Just because you are the incumbent doesn't mean you shouldn't have to try. You're not guaranteed a second term. So that's something that we really need to think about here. That's actually a big mistake. If you just think you can just sit back and not really try because you know that you're a shoo-in. The second thing that he pointed out, this piece about Trump's legal issues. He is letting you know, he's saying the quiet part out loud, he's letting you know that, again, because Americans are so focused on Trump's legal issues, they're not focused on what Joe Biden is not doing. Let's be very clear about this. The more Trump is in the news about his legal issues, the less likely people are going to be focused on Joe Biden not getting results. And that is on purpose. Let's go on.
A source close to the president said that one reason he's holding off on announcing is to, quote, preserve the option not to run. Do you think that makes Democrats a little nervous?
No, I'm just going to roll my eyes at that. Like, let's be real. Biden is building his 2024 campaign team. Honestly, I thought the soft launch of his campaign was the State of the Union back in February. We heard the phrase, finish the job. That's what he intends to do. So I'm just going to dismiss that. I'm not nervous by it. But what I do think is that
you have to be wary of the opinion of the individuals that they bring on these panels. This is why I wanted to show this. Notice her title said Democrat Party strategist. So, of course, she is going to have a favorable opinion of Joe Biden. They don't bring on people that aren't already a part of some type of organization or some type of group that is going to continue the narrative that they want to have pushed out. That's important for people to understand. Even when you see these town halls and they pretend to call on a random person in the audience, those people are not random. Those people are already chosen. I've been to town halls. I know how it works. Those people are already chosen. They've already submitted their questions ahead of time. It looks to the viewers, it looks like it's random and they're picking a random person, but they're not. Those questions have already been pre-selected, and those are the people that they call on.
he is enjoying the luxury of being a strong incumbent, as Nick said, right? Like, he's going out talking about all the things he's achieved legislatively, all the businesses or all the investments he's making in communities across the country.
Nope, you had it right the first time. She said all the businesses, and then she said all the investments. No, you had it right the first time. Focusing on business, all the business he's done. She had it right the first time.
Country. He's sending out his cabinet to do the same. And so they're going to keep doing that for as long as they can.
You're right. It's such a soft launch. Sarah, what do you make of this? And from Republicans' perspective, you have former President Trump really sucking up all of the oxygen. There's really no urgency for Ron DeSantis to get in, or even former Vice President Pence right now.
I think you're going to see everything get pushed back closer to the summertime, which usually doesn't happen. And
look at her title. President and CEO, Republican Main Street Partnership. These are the people that they bring on.
Biden does have the luxury of time, though I'm not sure the Democrats really want him. All the latest polling, it's like 50%. So it's going to be an interesting time, but I think you're going to see people jumping in June or July.
Yeah, this week is so interesting. I think we actually have that polling that you're talking about. Let's look at that. The idea that Democrats are just not that enthusiastic about a second Biden run.
And they're still trying to push him. Still, let me take the captions off so we can look at this poll. Democratic voters, Dems should nominate Joe Biden 44%. And I'd argue, I don't even think it's that high. I don't think it's that high. Remember, they're not polling people like me. I don't have a landline. I think it's less than that. Another candidate, 54%. So the majority of the people that they did poll do not want Joe Biden. And the Democratic Party is still trying to prop him up and convince the American people that you need to support him again. If people have to be convinced this hard, it is not worth it.
54%, Nicholas, say they want to see another candidate. I mean, is he going to be getting off to a weak start no matter when he announces?
Well, from every Democrat I've talked to, the consensus is that, yes, maybe another person could be better at some point. But right now, there is no other choice other than, say, relatively fringe candidates like Marianne Williamson, right?
Let's pause here for a second. I hope you guys see what he just did there. Let's hear that part again. Pay attention to the vocabulary that he uses. This part is important.
Democrat I've talked to, the consensus is that, yes, maybe another person could be better at some point. But right now, there is no other choice other than, say, relatively fringe candidates like Marianne Williamson. Right?
Two things. First, he says there is no other choice. Okay. So that right there puts doubt in people's mind. Well, there's no one else. Got to vote for Joe. Then he says, I think he catches himself here. Then he says, other than fringe candidates like Marianne Williamson. Pay attention to the vocabulary. Fringe, no other choice. Choice and fringe. So let's think about something here for a second. I don't support Marianne's race. We all know this is not a secret. Obviously, I don't support people running through the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. I don't support this two-party system. But why is the person challenging Joe Biden, why is that considered to be a fringe candidate? What's fringe? Did you also notice he didn't mention RFK Jr.? This is recent. This video, this Meet the Press episode, this is recent. When I was searching for stories, when was this? Today's Tuesday. It was Monday. That was yesterday. I chose the story. This video is pretty new. Pretty new. Notice they didn't mention him. Fringe is the word. So that right there, he just put doubt in Democrat voters' mind twice. No choice and fringe. And that's how they get people to continue to support people like Joe Biden.
Right. Democrats see Biden as the incumbent, and if he officially declares, they will unite behind him. That's just kind of the way it is right now.
It's interesting. Chuck made a point that this week could be a consequential one in the 2024 race because, or last week, I should say, you had former President Trump's indictment. You had the two dueling rulings on abortion in Texas and Washington state. And then you have the two lawmakers who were expelled in Tennessee. Juanita, do you think it's overstated to say that this past week could be pivotal?
Let's be real.
Here comes the fear-mongering. If you don't vote for Joe Biden, look what's happening across the country. If you don't vote for him, look at what happened to those lawmakers, those politicians in Tennessee who were pushed out by the GOP. Look at what's happening with Trump's business dealings and his legal issues. If you don't vote for Joe Biden, Look at what could happen to you and the rest of the country. And if Joe Biden does win again, I'm telling you, it will be based for the most part out of fear. Out of fear. This is the same thing that happened for a lot of people in 2020. Because let's be real, I didn't see any Biden signs in people's yards. And I live in Massachusetts. I saw Bernie Sanders signs, lots of them. I saw Pete Buttigieg signs for some random reason. A couple Elizabeth Warren signs, and she's from here. Okay? But for the most part, it was fear. People were afraid. Oh, God, we don't want to have Trump again, so I'm going to go vote for Joe Biden. It's not like that many people liked Joe Biden. And this is the point it's come to in this country where people are basing their votes more so on fear instead of what am I getting from the person that I'm voting for? Those days are long gone. Maybe so much more in local politics, you'll see that some. But when it comes to the president of the United States, it's the fear-mongering tactic has been going on for quite a while, actually. Quite a while.
This past week drained me. Me too. News, but it is showing the impact of inflection points. It's showing that younger voices are standing up and being active in ways that I think older generations aren't prepared for, thus the expulsion of 2 Black people out of Tennessee State House. It shows that the public is more in tune and supportive of these charges against Trump. I think that number even went up by 5 points in the last 7 days of people believing he took illegal action. It also shows that people want people to fight for their rights in these abortion rulings with mifepristone. And so when Biden is on the right side of that and Republicans across the country are repeatedly trying to enforce more and more bans, that's going to make it explicitly clear, just like it did in Wisconsin, where Janet Protasewicz won by 11 points in a state that Biden only won by less than 1 point in 2020.
That was a big turnout for down in Madison.
Yeah, I want to talk about the abortion issue and the Tennessee issue. I want to play you what Texas Republican Congressman Tony Gonzalez had to say and then get your reaction on the others.
Abortion's going to be a big one, right? Now, let's remember who overturned it. It was the Supreme Court, which is more so conservative leaning now. And let's also remember that the Democratic Party had decades to codify Roe v. Wade into law. When Roe v. Wade was passed by the Supreme Court, at that point in time, that was a conservative leaning Supreme Court. This is how things have changed. Democrats that have been in power since never took that next step to put the nail in the coffin to codify it into law. Obama promised to do that, didn't do it. He said it would be the first thing that he would do, chose not to do it, said, well, we can't do it because of Lieberman. You know, I want to show you how this trend continues with the rotating villain. We couldn't do it because of Lieberman. You hear Biden say, oh, we can't do it because of Manchin and Sinema. This has been an issue for a long time. Or we can't do it because of the Senate parliamentarian. If you have issues with the Senate parliamentarian, you can replace the Senate parliamentarian. You know who did that? George W. Bush did that. Didn't like the Senate parliamentarian, said time to go. Democrats can do the same thing if they really wanted to, if they really dislike what the Senate parliamentarian was doing. But I want you to hear this because I'm telling you, it's going to be abortion. They're going to push that and say they're going to take our rights away. They already took your rights, already taken away. So there's that. It's going to be abortion. There's going to be some type of call in reference to, I know they'll try to do this one, in reference to the mandates issue. They'll go on that, even though I think people have different opinions about that, you know. Or they'll go on the racial issue about the gerrymandering, and they'll just keep pushing those same issues. You see, as long as the Democratic Party, when they were in power and they had the position to do so, and they chose not to codify Roe v. Wade into law, that actually continues to help them win. Because if they were to do that, which they could have done that when Joe Biden took office back in 2021, if they codified Roe v. Wade into law, then they have to find another issue that already divides the people to use as some type of fear mongering to get them to come out and vote for them again. This piece is important. The other piece they're going to use is the canceling of student loan debt, even though we know that has not gone through. Mark my words. That's how they're going to get people to come out again. Listen to this piece about the abortion issue.
I think it's important that we take care of women, and it's important that we have real discussions on women's health care and get off the abortion, get off the abortion conversation. Women have a whole lot more other issues than just abortion. And let's have those real conversations, and let's talk about the other things that are happening in this world.
Sarah, what do you make of that strategy? Clearly, what you are seeing is an attempt to figure out how to deal with this issue that continues to appear to be a liability for Republicans.
Sure does. And it would be no surprise that I actually agree with Tony. Know him very well.
Is that realistic, though, to get off of the issue of abortion?
Well, we need to talk about women's health care. And we need to change the abortion to women's health care. And we need to address that. And as Republicans, until we do that, we're going to see what's going on in Wisconsin and some other places. I have great faith we will. We will pivot and we'll start talking about it.
Nicholas, what are your sources telling you? I mean, clearly Republicans are scrambling to try to figure out how to message this moment. You hear what Sarah says. You hear what Congressman Gonzalez just said. Is this realistic that people are going to start to try to shift the conversation in that way?
And they're not going to mention to you that some of the red states have decided to codify Roe v. Wade to protect a woman's right to choose in their state, like Kansas, for example. They're not going to tell you that, because if they tell you that, then that lets the American people know. Because a lot of people, I've talked about ballot initiatives a lot, and I still talk about it, but a lot of the American people aren't aware of it. A lot of the American people don't even go to vote, so they don't even see these ballot initiatives, right? So they're not going to mention that. If they mention that, then that says to people, oh, wait a minute, we could actually have direct democracy and fight for these issues in our own states. What the hell am I dependent on the federal government for and waiting for them to try to do something? You mean I can organize with people in my own state and get these things accomplished and get these things passed? They don't want you to know about that.
Thing that Republicans have been trying to do for some time, are trying to pivot away towards the economy or any other set of issues. But Democrats saw this as a very potent line of attack in the last midterm elections. And as my colleague and I reported today, they're preparing to continue to make this an issue into this week. Right? House Democrats and Senate Democrats are prepping an amicus brief to file in this appeals court, which is going to move really fast. And so as a result, this is going to be a live issue. So as much as I think Republicans might try to pivot away from this, it's going to be something that will continue to loom over this next election.
And that will be something that will help the Democratic Party. And they know that, and they're holding on to that piece, and they're holding on to that student loan debt cancellation piece too. Like, I don't believe any of this is coincidence. I believe it's all on purpose. Now let's bring in Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and his role in all of this. Now that it is announced that he will also primary challenge Joe Biden. You need to know where RFK Jr. stands on some issues. I think a lot of us already know where he stands when it comes to the mandates. He's talked about this on Jimmy Dore. He's talked about it on Kim Iverson's show as well. But I want to show you where he stands in reference to the wars and the military-industrial complex. Now, here's an interview here that he had with Megyn Kelly. And he points out the fact that his son, oh, this is a little fuzzy. Oh, that's just the quality of the video. He points out the fact that his son actually participated in the war between Russia and Ukraine. He's going to give his opinion about that. He's going to tell you where he feels or how he feels, where he fits in all of this. One thing you have to know, I think sometimes people see the Kennedys as like this monolith. I live in Massachusetts. They are very well loved here. Robert F. Kennedy, from what I've seen, what I've heard from people in Massachusetts, they kind of see him as like the black sheep of the family, so to speak. His opinions are a little bit different. I don't agree with all of his political positions, but I want you to hear what he says here in reference to the war machine.
There's differences in my family, but we talk to each other about it, and I send him articles, where I disagree. And here's the bottom line for me. I think we have a military-industrial complex in this country that feeds on continual war, that they want continual state of war. I believe that it is very, very difficult. And this is what Madison and Adams said. Adams specifically said, America can support democracy abroad, but we will not go abroad in search of monsters to destroy. And why is that? Because an imperialism abroad is inconsistent with democracy at home.
That piece right there, I think, is important. Imperialism abroad is inconsistent with democracy at home. Hold on to that piece.
Will turn America into a national security state, into an authoritarian state, if we continue to be, our biggest industry be the military. Dwight Eisenhower on January 17th in 1961, just before he left office and handed it over to my uncle, made the best, probably the most important speech in American history, warning America against the rise of the military-industrial complex and talking about how it would subdue and destroy American democracy. And, listen, we go out from war to war to war, and each war is preceded by a propaganda barrage. And then the press all jumps on. And here the same thing happened during the Iraq War, which was the worst foreign policy choice that we ever made until COVID-19 came along.
Let's pause here. So obviously he's against the wars, and he definitely gets it when we talk about the military industrial complex and their goal to have these never ending wars, or you end a war and then you start another one. All right. Look at the way that Joe Biden pulled some of the troops out of Afghanistan and then started drone strikes in Somalia. In one thing, start another thing. And that is to support companies like Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. That's just the reality of it. There's profit to be made when we talk about war. There's no profit with peace. There just isn't. So that's what a lot of times this boils down to. So he definitely gets that piece. Now let's compare the three. When you have RFK Jr., who's apparently obviously anti-war, you have Marianne Williamson, who she's changing her position a little bit in reference to foreign policy, but she still supports the idea of giving Ukraine the weapons and things that they need to fight. So I've never heard her say she's anti-war. So to me, there's a big difference. Either you're anti-war, you're not anti-war. And if you don't tell me that you're anti-war, I'm not going to make that assumption that you are. And then you have Joe Biden, who's a warmonger. So this is why I say someone like RFK Jr. can actually appeal to people on different sides of the political spectrum. He can get some of those independent voters who are anti-war and don't like the government agencies that are against the FBI or the CIA, the security state. He can pull some of those voters. He can pull some of the Republicans, hell, to be honest, if he want to talk about getting rid of this war. He can pull some of the libertarian voters who are also anti-war. Marianne, when it comes to those particular issues, I don't see that happening. I don't see that happening. Joe Biden, I don't see that happening either. So this is why I say I wish he is running, but I wish he would run as an independent and not through the Democratic Party, because I think he can appeal to different sides of the aisle. And I think that is actually going to be the biggest threat. Not someone whose foreign policy is somewhat in line with Joe Biden's. That's not a big threat. You are a big threat when you are the opposing side. He's running through the same parties, which is why I say he shouldn't do this. But when you are the one that's saying, no, we're going to end these wars. No. The FBI and the CIA should not be in our homes. They should not be in our lives. We should have privacy. That's how you become, I guess I would say, I don't want to say a serious candidate, but that's how you become a threat. That's how you become a threat. When you call out the deep state, when you call out the government agencies, when you call out the corruption and the greed with these wars, that is a deep threat. And if you're not willing to call them out, if you can't call out these wars, if you can't call out the corruption, if you can't call out these issues with the FBI and the CIA, if you cannot call those things out, if you cannot call out the fact how this country has slowly overnight become more of an authoritarian state in our lives and trying to tell us what we can and cannot do in our own homes, at our own jobs, if you can't call that out, you are not a threat to Joe Biden. Let's go on.
In American history, and the New York Times had to apologize for its reporting with Judith Miller, and all of the neocon and CIA people who were tricked us into that war. President George Bush said the worst mistake of his presidency was believing George Tenet, the head of the CIA, when he said the weapons of mass destruction is a slam dunk. He said he was tricked by the CIA into that war.
There you
so
go.
If you look what's happened in the Ukraine, there was a CIA-sponsored coup in 2014, and the Rand Corporation, now we know, had published this blueprint that says we should our strategy, our global strategy should be to provoke Putin into overextending himself, and then confronting him in one of these countries, these former Soviet states. And, Putin is a gangster. He's homicidal. He's a thug. He's one of the worst people alive today. But we need to have a real debate about how this war, about our part in the whole thing, and what, the part the CIA played in it, and what part, the extension of NATO. When Gorbachev went to President Bush and said to President Bush, "I'm going to dismantle the Soviet Union. But I want your assurance. I want America's promise to me that you will not move NATO into the former Soviet satellite states as we."
This is after the fall of the Berlin Wall, for those who are wondering.
As they come off, we don't want to be surrounded by a hostile NATO. And Bush promised him, we will not, on behalf of the American people, we will not move NATO 1 inch to the east. And since then, we've moved NATO into, I think, 13 countries that we promised we wouldn't do. We've installed missile systems in each one of them that can be converted literally overnight into nuclear missile systems now. And then you have a government in the Ukraine that has killed between 13,000 and 14,000 ethnic Russians in the eastern part of the government that we helped install. And you had a neocon, Victoria Nuland, selecting the cabinet in 2014.
This is the piece I think that Marianne is missing. This is the piece. It's obvious, this is a topic, for him, in reference to foreign policy and these wars, that he seems to be very knowledgeable about. And I think this is why I'm saying I think that someone like him can appeal to people on different sides of the aisle. And that's why I think he should run as an independent. No, I know it's not easy. I know it's more difficult, but he is very well known. It's not like people don't know who the Kennedys are. And that's what I've said before. If someone is going to run for president as an independent or a third party candidate, it needs to be someone who is well known. And that's why I said that's what I think he should do.
We help install this government. And then, then they start treating their ethnic Russians like redheaded stepchildren. And now we're now in a war. They got in a war with them where they're killing 13 to 14,000 ethnic Russians in the eastern part of Ukraine. Now, in 1962, when the Russians moved nuclear missiles into Cuba, we had, on the XCOM committee, we had, I think, 11 of the people on that committee who said we should bomb them, even nuclear bomb them. And my Uncle Jack said, what if that means nuclear war with the Russians? And they said, well, they won't do it. We got to do it. We got to invade Cuba. So, they were 90 miles from us, and they were, I think, 1,400 miles from Washington. But we have missile emplacements now that are a few miles from the Russian border.
For the younger people in the chat, he's referring to the Bay of Pigs, and his uncle Jack, he's referring to JFK. So for those who are not familiar, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is Bobby Kennedy's son. So just wanted to connect the dots there. For some of you just joining, like, what? Who's Jack, and what's he talking about? That kind of thing.
So, and if the Russians moved nuclear missiles into Mexico, or missile systems of any kind, and they killed 14,000 American expatriates in Guadalajara and Baja, we would be in there overnight. So, and I'm not, listen, what my uncle said about foreign policy is you always put yourself in the other guy's shoes. And you always figure out, right out, give them a way out. And nobody's talking about any way to settle this. What they're talking about and what Biden's talking about is regime change. Yep. And that's what the CIA wants, regime change in Russia. And that's insane. It's going to get us the same place as regime change did in Iraq, where the situation just gets worse.
So he understands that too. And this is another piece. You guys, your comments in the your comments in the chat is funny. Thoughtless Animal said he's too crazy to be president. Well, we have Biden right now, so I don't know. You guys are cracking me up. Danny said his grandfather was a bootlegger, smuggler, gangster also. Man. I'm reading all of these. You guys are, oh man, you guys are bad. Let me let this finish. But the regime change wars, yes. What do we say about the regime change wars? That the people in that country usually end up being worse off than they were before the U.S. came in and overthrew those leaders, right? The one I always point to is Saddam Hussein, right? Saddam Hussein, what happened? The U.S. government came in, they took him out, overthrew him, and that actually gave rise to ISIS. Some people don't realize that, but that's what happened. Saddam Hussein was a brutal dictator. We're not here to prop up Saddam. We're not saying he was great. He was not. That being said, one of the things he was able to do was to keep those organizations from forming. He was able to keep that under control. And the moment they came in and they took him out, that gave rise to ISIS. This is why we should not have a hand in overthrowing any other country's government. Just imagine how you would feel. Imagine if like Germany propped up one day and said, all right, Biden's out. We're going to put this person in as president and you guys have a nice day. Actually, you guys are probably like that. Actually, you guys are probably like that if someone came in and said, okay, Biden's got to go, put someone else in. But you get where I'm coming from. It's another country making that decision for a country where they don't even, our government doesn't live in that country at all. And then the people who are left in that country are left there to deal with the devastating effects. That's the problem with these regime changes and these regime change wars. And you brought up a great example, Deneen. Libya is a great example.
So I don't think, listen, those are my arguments today, Megan. As of now, it's not something I'm wedded to. These are really kind of anxieties I have about this war and the reasons this war troubles me, but I listen to other people. And, I can, and I had a CIA guy on my podcast who made a really strong case, for intervention. My son, who knows all the things that I am troubled about this, and he's troubled by them too. He's not naive. He understands, the Ukrainian government is as corrupt as the Russian government. And they're intolerant of civil rights. And then you have all these, really neo-Nazis and the Azov battalion, et cetera. And Connor's aware of that. Connor saw none of those Nazis when he was over there. The people he worked with, and when I hear him talk about it and the feelings that he has about the Ukrainian people, it makes you want to cry. And he's very articulate and very convincing about it. So I'm lucky that I don't have to now I'm not in a position to make a decision about where you go next, because I think it's really complicated. All wars are. But I think we ought to be talking about these things. And the concerns that I raise, we need to have an open debate about them. Because, when you're taking $50 billion that could be over here paying off student debt and restoring our middle class. But
isn't that what we've been complaining about, guys? All the billions of dollars going over there. We could be using money to pay off student debt or give people health care in this country.
We're paying for that. And I can tell you, people are paying for it at the pump.
Yeah,
we're paying $6 or $7 a gallon. And that is the cost of the Ukrainian war that you as an individual are paying every single day.
We're also paying for it in the grocery stores as well. So, yes, very well said. Again, I don't agree with him on every political issue, but I think when it comes to the anti-war piece, and I think also when it comes to where these billions of dollars are going, giving people healthcare, canceling student loan debt, I agree with him on that. Now, there's exciting, what I consider to be exciting news about RFK. This was announced. News: former congressman and former Democratic presidential candidate Dennis Kucinich is now advising Robert F. Kennedy Jr. When contacted Friday by CBS News, Kucinich acknowledged he is advising him, but said beyond that, the campaign will have more to say in the coming days. So I am going to keep my ear peeled for that, because that's huge. Because now you have somebody who was already inside of Congress, who is a part of the Democratic Party. He knows how it works. He's been pushed out by his own party. So imagine getting that person to help you. That's huge. That is huge. Jonathan said, oh shit. I'm trying not to look at the comments because the comments are wild right now. The comments are wild. But that is, I think that's huge. That is a big deal there. So we'll keep our eye out for it. We'll keep our eye out for it. Thank you for the super chat, Laugh66. I'm an idiot confusing RFK with JFK. RFK is unafraid of the Dems and the deep state. I have not seen a politician taking on the deep state like RFK openly, repeatedly does. It's personal for him. Thank you for the super chat. And you are not an idiot, Laugh. Thank you for the super chat, Cool Blue. Dem-friendly news media wants to control what Dem-friendly votes think and do. The Democrats are not a party for transformative change. They prevent it. There you go. Thank you for the super chat, Natalie. It's been a while since I showed my appreciation for the great work you do. Thanks, Sabby. Thank you so much, Natalie. Thank you for the super chat, Juston. Check out Omar Mahudin, the 19-year-old college student running for mayor of Woburn. Got to get him elected. I will do that, Justin. I'll do that. Deneen says, I'm sincerely confused and perplexed that he would run as a Democrat. I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, with the message that he has, I think he should run as an independent. I don't think he could run like under the Green Party. I don't think it works like that. I think you actually have to be a member of the Green Party to run. He's also really big on environmental issues too. That's another thing. Thank you for the super chat, Justin B. There's no path for RFK Jr. to win as a Democrat. There's no point in supporting him or Marianne if they continue to run as Dems. If RFK Jr. is serious, he'll need to do a dirty break and run as a Green or independent. I'm going to try to see if I can interview him, you guys, and I want to ask him that question if I can. I want to ask him, like, would you be willing, to do that? Thank you for the super chat, Kyle. No government is more corrupt than ours. Thank you for the super chat, Roger Meadows. I wonder if Sam will jump ship and support former co-host. I don't know. I'll take that comment on Rockfin. Thank you. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. So here's the talking point to you, Sab. When these vote blue no matter who Dems use fear to make you vote blue no matter who. I am descendants of those who are always at the bottom no matter what party is in charge. So miss me with that. And whatever point they counter with you, say that is totally false and complete fiction. Yes, you said if they codify Roe v. Wade, they'd have to find something else to divide us on that only works in the presence of parties. There you go. There you go. There you go, telling me no again. It's an old R&B song. My parents used to listen to that. I think that might be Keith Sweat or something. I don't know if you guys even know who that is, but I just know he used to whine a lot. Moving on to this story here about Macron. Macron, his country is going through a lot right now. Protesters in France, we've been covering this. They're still protesting. They're still mad at Macron over him increasing the retirement age from 62 to 64. But now Macron has made a statement. And look, I am all for people standing up on their own and saying, you know what, we're going to make our own damn decisions. I'm all for that. But it's kind of funny it's coming from him because he doesn't even have control of his own country right now. He is not even trying to please his own citizens, and he's trying to tell the entire continent of Europe what they should and should not do. Now, this is in reference to China and Taiwan, this conflict. Now, Macron recently met with Xi Jinping, and they had a conversation in there in reference to Russia and Ukraine. And he also said at that discussion that he could not fully support or fully break away from China, that he will still support China in some way, shape, or form, because he said we just cannot afford to do that, as a country. He realizes who butters the bread. But now Macron is saying some things, and I want you to hear what he had to say about what Europe should do in reference to this conflict between China and Taiwan. Listen to this. He's given an entire continent advice and he can't control his own country. This is funny.
The French president's 3-day visit to Beijing could have ended in two ways. One, where Europe brings China on board the diplomatic table. Or two, China brings Europe to its side to see how different the same table looks. We can conclude now that the trip has done a bit of both. On his way back from Beijing, Emmanuel Macron was interviewed by Politico, and he made this statement. I'm quoting here, "Europe must reduce its dependency on the United States. The great risk Europe faces is that it gets caught up in crises that are not ours."
Now, I don't have any problem with that statement. Here's the thing, okay? I don't have a problem with this. Europe must reduce its dependency on the United States. I agree. The great risk Europe faces is that it gets caught up in crises that are not ours. I agree. But the problem is it's coming from him. Like that's the Sacre Bleu. That's the problem. It's coming from him. So I totally get where he's coming from with that. And then this brings up the question in reference to allyship, because if countries like France are an ally of the United States, and most of the European countries are, I asked this question a couple weeks ago. When is it okay as an ally to stand up and say, no, I do not back you on this particular situation? When is that okay? Apparently, in reference to this situation with China and Taiwan, he don't really want to follow the U.S. lead. And he apparently also doesn't want to follow China's lead. He really wants Europe to stand up on their own and make their own decisions when it comes to these conflicts. And I totally understand that. I get that. Probably should have came from someone else, though. I'm just saying. Let's go on.
Up in crises that are not ours. And this prevents it from building its strategic autonomy. Now, coming from a key European country like France, this has raised many eyebrows. While Macron was talking in reference to Taiwan, the comments are being seen in a broader light as by experts. Macron had a similar stance on the defense industry as well, nuclear and renewable energy as well, and even dependence on the US dollar. The Western world is mostly seen as United States and Europe.
That piece right there, even when it comes to the US dollar. So now we already know that BRICS Well, most of them in BRICS have decided like we're just not going to go with US currency anymore. We're going to start like our own currency, right? This was kind of led by China. So Brazil has signed on for this. I believe India is a part of this as well. And now you have Macron from France saying like, yeah, even when it comes to the US dollar, I don't think we should really get with that anyway. What is happening, people? Because it seems like to me, he seems to be very brave and strong when it comes to standing up to other countries. But when it comes to just simply listening to and hearing the people in his own country, the people protesting, the millions of people protesting in France right now, they've been doing so for the past 2 weeks, he's absent. He's absent. He went to China and people were burning things down, including his favorite restaurant and including BlackRock. He doesn't even want to talk to his own people. He doesn't want to talk to his own citizens. That's the thing. Like, I feel like this is more believable to me if it came from someone else. Like, that's the thing.
While that is wrong from geography's point of view, it has made sense in politics, but maybe not anymore. The White House is vehemently pushing for policies to counter China. It is already facing a deterrence. It's already facing a difference of opinion from South Asia and Africa, where most of the countries are not giving in to Washington's diplomacy bullying, to say the least. They are choosing their interests over a crisis that has nothing to do with them.
And they see it as a form of bullying. And again, guys, you can answer this question for me in the chat. If you are an ally to another country, is there ever a point in time when you feel it is okay to say, we are not going to back you on this particular event or situation? Yes or no? Yes or no? Because I think this is a lesson for the U.S. government. You know, the U.S. government wants to police the world. They want to have their hand in every country. They want to have their hand. They want to steal resources in countries as well. Those countries become impoverished. The people struggle there because of it. But now we have reached a point, at least in my lifetime, where other countries, even those that were allies of the United States, are starting to push back and are starting to stand up and say, you know what? How about you leave us out of this one, right? We don't really want to get into this conflict with China and Taiwan. We don't really want anything to do with that. That's your jam. We're going to do something different. Things are changing, people. Things are changing. And this is just what I remember in my lifetime. I don't remember seeing this before. Let's go on.
And France is eyeing this club. China had to make sure that Europe does not get sucked into playing America's game. These statements are testament to that. Europe is ready to accept a world in which China becomes a regional. If we quickly zoom out on the world map, we see a similar pattern emerging in West Asia as well.
He said we cannot continue to play the U.S. game.
Region that was long seen as Washington's playground. But U.S. influence has come under fire, at least in this region. Joe Biden might say that the U.S. is not going anywhere. However, the countries are realizing that they don't need the U.S. to shape West Asia anymore.
Did you hear that? These countries are realizing they don't need the U.S. to shape West Asia anymore. They don't need us anymore.
China getting Iran and Saudi Arabia to the talking table, or Saudi and Oman sitting down with Houthi officials. The world order is changing. And for the first time, U.S. is not at the center of it.
There you go. Times have changed. Times are changing. You know, some of the countries got behind the U.S. in reference to this conflict with Russia and Ukraine, right? But countries in Africa decided to remain neutral. What's interesting about that, I mentioned this because it was actually Macron who tried to pressure political leaders in Africa to choose a side in reference to Russia and Ukraine. That came from Macron. And now that same guy is telling people, yeah, we don't need to play the US game. We need to make decisions for ourselves. But you wanted to tell leaders in Africa to play your game. This is the thing that cracks me up. I don't know. I don't know what this is about. But Politico goes further into this as well. It says Europe must resist pressure to become America's followers, says Macron. Look at the look on his face. Boy, I tell you. Let me just read a little bit of this here. Europe must reduce its dependency on the U.S. and avoid getting dragged into confrontation between China and the U.S. over Taiwan. Again, that comes from Macron. That was when he got back from his 3-day visit in China, right? Speaking with Politico and two French journalists after spending around 6 hours with Chinese President Xi Jinping during his trip, Macron emphasized his pet theory of strategic autonomy for Europe, presumably led by France, to become a third superpower. Now, I'm going to tell you why that actually is probably not going to work. It goes back to another agreement that happened in the 1990s. I'm going to pull that up in just a second. But he wants France to even be the leader. He wants France to lead it. But you can't run your own country right now. You can't. Let's go on. He said the great risk Europe faces is that it gets caught up in crises that are not ours, which prevents it from building its strategic autonomy. It goes on here. The paradox would be that, overcome with panic, we believe we are just America's followers. The question Europeans need to answer: is it in our interest to accelerate a crisis on Taiwan? No. The worst thing would be to think that we Europeans must become followers on this topic and take our cue from the U.S. agenda and a Chinese overreaction. He's criticizing both here. And then I want to end with this piece here. Just hours after his flight, headed back to Paris, China launched large military exercises around the self-ruled island of Taiwan, which China claims as its territory, but the U.S. has promised to arm and defend. And I just want to say something again here. We need to remember that Taiwan is a part of China. Okay. Notice how Politico worded that. China claims as its territory. Taiwan is a part of China. It is not a separate thing. So let's go back in. Those exercises were a response to a Taiwanese president Wynn's 10-day diplomatic tour of Central American countries that included a meeting with Republican U.S. House Senator Kevin McCarthy while she transited in California. People familiar with Macron's thinking said he was happy Beijing had at least waited until he was out of the Chinese airspace before launching the simulated Taiwan encirclement exercise. Beijing has repeatedly threatened to invade in recent years and has a policy of isolating the democratic island by forcing other countries to recognize it as part of one China. Now, forcing them to recognize it is a part of China. You got to check the wording with Politico sometimes. Now, this idea that Macron has about Europe becoming a third superpower, releasing the hold that the U.S. government has on it, that actually may not be plausible. And it goes all the way back to something called the Wolfowitz Doctrine. Now, I want to explain this really quickly. The Wolfowitz Doctrine, and this is named after Paul Wolfowitz. He was the sponsor of the doctrine. It is an unofficial name given to the initial version of the Defense Planning Guide for the 1994 to 1999 fiscal years, dated February 18, 1992, published under Secretary of Defense for Policy Paul Wolfowitz and his deputy Scooter Libby. It was not intended for public release. It was leaked to the New York Times on March 7th, 1992. I'm going to show you that actual 1992 article, by the way. It sparked a public controversy about the U.S. foreign and defense policy. The document was widely criticized as imperialist, as the document outlined a policy of unilateralism and preemptive military action to suppress potential threats from other nations and prevent dictatorships from rising to superpower status. That piece is important. This goes all the way back to the 90s. Now, here's that article. New York Times, March 8th, 1992. Again, this was not supposed to be public information, but it got out there. U.S. strategy plan calls for ensuring no rivals develop. That includes China, that includes Russia, and that would include Europe too, if Macron wants Europe to be a third superpower. Let's go on. There's a piece from here that I want to read as well. Hopefully that's large enough. In a broad new policy statement that is in its final drafting stage, the Defense Department asserts that America's political and military mission in the post-Cold War era will be to ensure that no rival superpower is allowed to emerge in Western Europe, Asia, or the territory of the former Soviet Union. Let me highlight this. Not one. So just keep that in mind. This is why I continue to bring up the banks. This is why I keep telling you China has most of the banks in the top 10 in the world. This is what this is really about. This is not to say China is innocent. This is not to say Russia is innocent. Every country has their faults. But this is to point out a fact that there is an economic price here. And anytime another country starts to become a serious challenger to the United States economically or militarily or both, that is a problem. And that dates back to this particular document. It was a 46-page document. It was circulating at the highest levels of the Pentagon for weeks, in which Defense Secretary Dick Cheney, remember that guy, expects to release later this month, states that part of the American mission will be convincing potential competitors that they need not aspire to a greater role or pursue a more aggressive posture to protect their legitimate interest. Highlight this. Convincing potential competitors that they need not aspire to a greater role, that they need to stay where they are. They're allowed to go through a period of decline, but they're not allowed to become successful to the point that they are a serious competitor economically or militarily to the United States. This is a problem. So you see what happens, guys? You see what happens? When you have those countries that are on the brink of that, China is on the brink of that. Russia is on the brink of that. You don't think the U.S. government is going to try to find a way to suppress that? Dr. Nick, stay in your lane is basically the U.S. foreign policy. There you go. Eric, can you put the link to this in the chat so people can share this? Share this, people. Share it. This wasn't that long ago. 1992. And the only reason people found out about it is because it was leaked to the New York Times. Other than that, we still may never know about this. The Oracle says full spectrum dominance. Yep. There you go. So I agree with what Macron's saying is that, maybe they should start making their own decisions and not just go along with the U.S. every time. And especially with this situation with China and Taiwan, not go along with China either, that they should be able to be independent enough to have their own voice and their own say. I get all of that. But according to the Wolfowitz Doctrine, the U.S. government isn't going to make that possible. Share that with your friends. If you haven't had a chance to do so, Go ahead and hit that like button. That helps me with the algorithm. I hope you guys are learning something here tonight. Thank you for the super chat, Elizabeth. My mom from Mass was a huge fan of Kucinich. I wish she could be here to hear this news. Yeah, Elizabeth. Yeah, that's interesting. I did like Dennis Kucinich. Democratic Party did him wrong. Thank you for the super chat, Steve. Tell him to stay away from the Ambassador Hotel. Okay, do that. Breakup Google said Macron lecturing on stability is like Hillary lecturing on foreign policy. Right? Ian, Sabby, Macron will change his mind by tomorrow. He probably won't. He's trending, by the way, on Twitter because of this. So he is pretty popular now. Pretty popular now. Okay, let's get to our final story here, which is Jimmy Dore. So the Jimmy Dore wake up call. So Jimmy Dore had an interview recently with Dr. Drew. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Dr. Drew. I am. Dr. Drew, he used to host a show. This is how I came to know of him, not because of his medical profession, but he used to host a show on MTV with another guy, Adam something. I can't remember Adam's last name, but it was called Love Line. And like people would call in and ask for relationship advice or that kind of thing. Sometimes there were questions like about sexual advice and embarrassing moments that people have had. It was really, really interesting for that point in time. Adam Carolla. Yes. Thank you so much for that. So that's how I knew about who Dr. Drew was. And then later on, I realized, he really was like a medical professional. He also has helped people in reference to addiction. So he hosted the show at one point in time called Celebrity Rehab, something like that. So anyway, he's had years and years of being a medical professional. That is his field. And he happens to host shows here and there, like me have a podcast, that kind of thing. I want you to hear this piece. Most of this interview is about the jab. This part right here towards the end is the part that I want to zero in on. Because some people, for whatever reason, they have assumed that Dr. Drew is conservative. He clears that up here, by the way. But the wake up piece in reference to Jimmy Dore is that I want people to hear what he is saying here in this particular discussion. And I want people to wake up. For a second, if you don't like Jimmy Dore, whatevs. Close your eyes and pretend it's someone else. But listen to what is said. Because there are a lot of times where there are other issues that are used against the American people to keep us divided or to start some type of division. And every time that happens, it takes our eye away from the real issue that affect the 99% of us. And that is done on purpose. This is a really good interview. It's a little bit over, it's almost an hour and a half. Listen to this piece here.
Talking about COVID and vaccines, but that's just, we could talk about almost any topic. And I feel like we are in the upside down. What do we do? What is going on? I always thought I was sort of a left-leaning libertarian. Now I don't know what I am. I guess I'm independent is all I can call myself, but I am troubled by the excesses on both sides. They all sort of drive towards the upside down, where things that are pragmatically useful and beneficial to human beings beg no influence here in this world. And how do we get back? Or do you have any thoughts about getting back to a world where people can thrive and build and be economically engaged, and just the opposite of what we're doing now, where everyone is tribal and upside down in their understanding of reality?
And back when people had common sense, I'm sorry, back when more people had common sense, I feel like people really lost it. I feel like between Donald Trump winning in 2016 and with the pandemic, I feel like people have their brains are just wrecked to where it has gotten to the point where people don't even have common sense anymore. It's like, I really do feel like some people would hear someone that is a Republican say, hey, the sky is blue. And they'll snap back and be like, no, it's not. You're just saying that because you're right wing. Stuff like that. Like, I feel like people really just lost it, right? How did we get to that point? I feel like it started with 2016. Some of you may feel like it started further back than that. But when Dr. Drew mentions the upside down, it reminds me of Stranger Things. In Stranger Things, there is the upside down. And it's basically the world above ground, underneath the ground, flipped upside down, and it's darker. And there's weird things that happen in the upside down. But it's like people have really lost their minds. Like just basic common sense is gone. I'm going to tell you what I think is a part of that, but listen to what Jimmy has to say first.
Well, look what's happening in France right now, right? So in France, they tried to raise the retirement age from 62 to 64, and millions of people got in the street for weeks. They're not stopping, and that's what we need here in the United States. That happens in France. It doesn't happen here. And that's the only thing. So the problem is people think the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are actually opposition parties. They agree on all the big things. They all agreed on, they agree on war. They agree on the military industrial complex, imperialism, hegemony. They agree on that. They agree on crushing a railroad strike. All right. They agree on. So they're both pro-war parties. They're both anti-worker. They're both in the pocket of big health, big pharma, and of Silicon Valley. And so that what people need to realize is the Democratic Party is not a left-wing party. They are a pro-war, pro-Wall Street party. And so we need an organization to go against them.
That piece is very crucial. They agree with corporate powers. They agree with corporatism. They agree with that. Neither party has problems with the billionaires. Someone say, oh, with Bernie Sanders is registered. He's independent. And even he don't really have that much problem with the billionaires as he said he did, or otherwise he wouldn't have told you to vote for the corporate opponent that he ran against. But that's a whole nother story. But neither of these parties have a problem with billionaires. Neither of these parties have a problem with Wall Street. When it comes to the corporate powers that be, they have bipartisanship. When it comes to war, they have bipartisanship because that also is a part of the corporate powers that be, because the military industrial complex is backed up by Wall Street. So since both of these parties support Wall Street, they support the military industrial complex. All of these things are connected. Anytime you have someone like George Soros and his son, by the way, in recent news, having inside meetings with people in Congress. What does that tell you what's going on? Having inside meetings with organizations like the Sunrise Movement. Why are these grassroots organizations taking money from billionaires? More people need to call that out. I don't care if you volunteered for the organization. Call it out. Ask them why they're taking money from these people. Ask them. Let's go on.
And so when you have people like Bernie Sanders or the Squad, AOC, and those people, the Justice Democrats, inside Congress as a Democrat, that's actually a negative because we're not going to have real change. And because that makes people think that there's someone fighting for them inside the government. There isn't. Bernie Sanders tucked his tail and doesn't want to be considered Ralph Nader. And so he goes along with every horrible thing, including being a war pig, which he is. He's a war pig of the highest honor, and he smears peace activists. That's what Bernie Sanders has turned into. He's a mouthpiece now for the establishment.
And this piece we got to chime in on as well. And he's right. Some people still do believe that those progressives are in there fighting for them. AOC was called out, during Dave Sirota's interview, voting along with Joe Biden, 91% of the time. He didn't push back. I'm not going to get into that discussion. And that interview was cray. But how is she fighting for us? How? All the people who come to defend AOC every time she gets criticized, or any of the squad members when they get criticized, how are they fighting for us? How is it that much better to have them there when they're not doing anything, voting along with establishment Democrats? How is that better? If Jamal Bowman, if his voting record is almost identical to Elliot Engel, who was his predecessor, what good is it to have Jamal Bowman there? These are the kind of questions we need to ask. These are the kind of questions.
disgusting. And so what we need to, there's not going to be change in this country until people lose faith in the system and get out in the streets. You know, Christian Smalls organized the first Amazon union on Staten Island. And how did he do that? He did it with Trump voters, because that's who live on Staten Island and that's who work there. He organized along class lines. People have to realize that we have to organize along class lines, and these aren't left-right problems anymore. Again, when 80% of the country lives paycheck to paycheck, these are not left-right issues.
And that doesn't mean, I want to add this as well. When we say organize along class lines, that doesn't mean you still can't organize for other issues. Just like when we organize for Medicare for all, that doesn't mean you can't organize for police brutality. You know what I mean? So I just want to say that, because people hear this and be like, what about my issue? What about my issue? What about me? What about you? What about that? And it's just like, you can still do those things. But in reference to like a mass movement, yes, there needs to be some type of class movement in this country. Otherwise, the billionaires will continue to win. And as long as you're distracted over red team, blue team, we will not get there. A lot of this is theater. A lot of it. The Trump legal woes, Joe Biden falling on a bike. Like, a lot of this is theater, and it keeps people distracted. If they're not distracted by that, then they're distracted by the Kardashians. They're distracted by the latest gossip on Entertainment Tonight. They're distracted by those things. And so that they're not focused on the financial troubles that a lot of people are in right now in this country, especially since the pandemic.
We're spending $1 trillion on empire and not taking care of our own country. These are not left-right issues. And what the biggest thing they don't want us to realize, Dr. Drew, is that we have more in common. They want us to blame our enemy they did a controlled demolition of our economy during COVID. And then they want us to blame our neighbors for the economic pain we felt that only helped a handful of millionaires. And I'm not going to blame my neighbor because he wouldn't take a vaccine that never worked the way they said it did in the first place. I'm going to love my neighbor, and I'm going to realize that I am my neighbor and that we have more in common that separates us, and we share a common enemy. And that is what scares the hell out of them the most. When the left and right come together and realize that we have more in common that divides us, that's what's going to really scare. That's the only thing.
Let me chime in here for just a second, because I want to add something to this as well. It is really disturbing that our country actually became divided over healthcare. It's very disturbing. It's disturbing that our country became divided over bodily autonomy. This is how mainstream media really just broke people's brains, how people like really fed into the propaganda. The same people that people have been watching, the same people who've been lying to you for the past couple of years, they lied to you about Russiagate. They lied to you about the Iraq war, and you still want to believe and listen to those people. That's the thing that drives me crazy. Why would you trust them? Why would you trust them when you have someone like Rachel Maddow who argued in court that they're not even news, they're infotainment? Why would you trust them? And people still do. Too much propaganda that is happening to the point where the country became divided over fucking healthcare. That's how ridiculous it is.
That scares the establishment, by the way. And they've got us pretty divided. Every way the corporate media, they report every story in a way that separates the country, whether it be COVID lockdowns or vaccines, whether it be Black Lives Matter or Kyle Rittenhouse, whether it be the Ukraine war or the Syrian war. Everything they report is a way to separate us and blame our neighbor. Well, we have a lot more in common, and that's my message for people. Your neighbor is not your enemy. The enemy is the people who want to take away your free speech, and the people who want more war and want to break more unions and end more strikes. Those are the people who want to control doctors, like they just passed a law in California, making sure that doctors couldn't give alternative treatments against Big Pharma's recommendation. We got to come together against the establishment. And
let me just chime in here and say something about the neighbor thing. Nick and I have talked about this before. They really do not want you to talk to your neighbors. They want you to stay inside your homes, be forever online on social media, and watch CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC. That's all the information they really want you to get. They don't want you to talk to your neighbor because they're afraid that your neighbor may give you some information that you need that they don't want you to have. Let's be real. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if your neighbor is Republican, Democrat, etc. Why are we using that as a dividing line in reference to who we're going to talk to? Why? Makes no sense. Makes no sense. But they don't want you to talk to your neighbor. They want you to be afraid of your neighbor. They want you to be afraid of people who have a different opinion than you. You're not even allowed to disagree with people anymore. You disagree with someone, mainstream media wants you to cancel that person and cut them off. You go on Twitter, you disagree with someone, the people on Twitter want you to cancel that person and cut them off. They don't want you to have a discussion. They don't want you to have a meeting with that person. They want you guys to argue back and forth, and then you cut them off and let them go. And that's how we never get anywhere. And that's why, in reference to the left, that's why the left doesn't get anything done. I've seen it time and time again. Let's try to organize this and do this. Oh no, so-and-so's a part of that, so I'm not going to participate. Every fucking time. You can't, I'm not kidding. For those of us who are organizers, it is very frustrating. And I don't see other people having this problem. But when it comes to the left, it's just like, no, we can't organize with that group. We can't talk to those people over there. Didn't that person make a comment 3-4 years ago? They can't be a part of this at all. And you know what ends up happening? The event doesn't happen. Some of these people are infiltrators. Some of these people are ops. And some of these people are fed. And I call it like it is. I'm sorry, Marvin. I'm sorry. I've been better. I'm sorry. But that's why it doesn't get anywhere. Nowhere. You have people like legacy left media people arguing with Nick, my comrade from RBN, about doing mutual aid and direct action. Make it make sense. If you say you're for the workers and you're for the workers going on strike, well, part of that means you need to have some form of mutual aid. That's required when people go on strike. They need to have some form of mutual aid. They get mad at us for talking about mutual aid and direct action. Why not focus on voting? Just sit back and do nothing. These things can coexist together. But it does not happen because the people who actually have the resources and the platform to make these events bigger than what they are, they tune it out. They drown it out. People too focused on their fucking egos and their careers. They don't want to promote marches for Medicare for all. They don't want to promote an anti-war rally. They want to get paid and interview AOC. Make it make sense.
People looked into government and electoral politics to change things. It's not going to happen.
It's interesting. I have not heard the well, there you go. You've not heard the Christian virtue of love thy neighbor as thyself in many, many decades. I've not heard that said in a long time, which is kind of interesting that you're framing this as neighborliness. I think that is a great way to do it, number one. Number two, would it not be accurate to say that they are inflating or inflaming racial tensions as a way of obfuscating class tensions so they can maintain their elite status?
Dr. Drew, that is a bullseye. 100%. You are correct. So what people don't realize that during the Democratic Party turned its back on the working class during the era of Bill Clinton. And people think that he was the lesser of two evil. Turns out he wasn't the lesser of two evil because he was able to do things that a Republican wasn't, meaning he was able to pass NAFTA. George Bush the first tried to pass NAFTA. He couldn't because the Blue Dog Democrats wouldn't go along with it. Here comes Bill Clinton. He gives cover to the Blue Dog Democrats. They cut the legs out from underneath the workers and unions for a generation. So that's what people need to realize, right? We got to come together and we have more in common. And the Democratic Party turned their back on workers. So now that's why Trump is able to get blue-collar workers to vote for a billionaire who never did anything for a worker in his life because they're desperate. I interviewed a Waffle House cook.
That piece is important. We got to go back to Bill Clinton. I think someone mentioned Barack Obama. Gene said the election of Obama made people lose their minds objectively. And we can go back to Bill Clinton as well. Remember, it was Bill Clinton who kind of threw the working class people under the bus with NAFTA. So everybody can sit back now and point fingers at Donald Trump or whoever, Republican, but you have to go back to Bill Clinton. Yes, he did increase the minimum wage. Yes, he did do that. But he also brought in NAFTA, and that devastated the Rust Belt. And so here we are. And so when people ask, like, why did people in the Rust Belt come out and support Donald Trump? Because look at who turned against them. And you have to remember that some of those towns heavily supported Barack Obama when he said he was going to change things. We're talking about groups of people that voted for Barack Obama twice, some of them twice, and then turned around and voted for Donald Trump. There's a reason why that happened. And not everybody that voted for Trump is racist or sexist or misogynist. Some of them motherfuckers are just poor. And they were tired of it. And they were tired of being told that their town and their jobs were going to be saved, and it wasn't. Let's go on.
During the Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump election at Waffle House Cook in Virginia. And he said, Jimmy, we all know that Donald Trump is a loudmouth Yankee. He should have had his ass kicked a long time ago, but he's the only one promising us anything. And so anybody who goes up and promises people health, you promise people health care. We're the last country in the world who still won't give people health care. People still go bankrupt. I went bankrupt because I got sick in 2006 and I had platinum health care insurance coverage I was supposed to. So the Democratic Party turned their back on workers. No political party represents workers, which is why the Democrats and the establishment want to talk all about genders and bathrooms and race and white supremacy. That's not that any of those things aren't problems, but they're overemphasizing those things because they don't want to talk about the class struggle, which is what we already lost. They won. Okay. How many more billionaires got made during COVID while everybody got flattened? So that's what people don't realize. The reason why we're talking about all these issues that seem like culture wars is because the establishment wants to distract us from the economic war that is being waged and won by the establishment every day.
That is very important for people to hear and understand. When he talks about people that became richer during the pandemic or became billionaires during the pandemic, Rihanna was one of those people. And though I enjoy a Rihanna song from time to time, just like a lot of you, Rihanna became mega rich during the pandemic. So did Jay-Z. You know, you had people who were venture capitalists that became multimillionaires, were already a millionaire, became multimillionaires during the pandemic. These people increased their wealth while the rest of Americans were being laid off or lost their jobs because our state was locked down and those businesses had to close. And we were given a stimulus check while you had new billionaires. And they wanted to give you, let's give them $1,200 check. That'll solve their problems. And the CEOs of these companies became wealthier while their employees struggled. It's a class issue.
And the maintenance of an elite. They are really interested in maintaining their status as elite above all other consideration by fanning whatever they need to do to fan the tribal flames. They will do it provided that it maintains their elite status. It's that more people. I hope more people wake up to that. I think that's at least they'll stop listening to some of these people that have so poorly served us.
I hope more people wake up to that too. I mean, sometimes I feel like I'm screaming in the ether here, but that's why I'm glad he was able to go on Dr. Drew's show and get this message across.
What I try to tell people is that, you know what would help Black and brown people and transgendered people more than anything? Medicare for all. You want to help them? Give them a living wage. Give them a college education that doesn't bury them under mountains of debt. You want to help those people? That's how you help those people. You want to dismantle the prison industrial complex? That's how you help Black and brown people. And that's how you get behind them, not by playing culture wars and calling people white supremacists and dividing the country even further.
Right, and they're just taking the status quo and sort of expanding the status quo, which is not good. The status quo is not good. It should be that it's the status quo that needs to be dismantled, not the institutions. Jimmy, let's leave it at that, I'd say. Very fun.
A really good interview here, you guys. If you haven't seen it, like I said, it's much longer than this. But the name of the video is called Jimmy Dore on Comedy, Woke Ideology, and How to Enrage Both Conservatives and Liberals, asked Dr. Drew. So that's on Dr. Drew's channel. It is almost 90 minutes long, the interview. And the part that I just played for you is closer towards the end of the interview. But definitely, check that out. I thought it was really great. I really do. I'll go to some of the comments and then I'll finish up Nebraska. I have two more questions on Nebraska to finish up for ballot initiatives. Thank you for the super chat, CR. RFK Jr. has been fighting to rescue us from poisons his whole life, literally. And he wants to take on a deep state that probably killed his dad and uncle. He has a brave spirit of service. Love you. Thank you so much, CR. And I read Jean's about Obama. Dr. Nick said, what Jimmy is doing is what we should all be doing, spreading the message to any and all audiences. That's right. Thank you for the super sticker emoji. Thank you for the super chat, Mary. The time of listening to Congress is over. America, step out and talk to your neighbors and end the fighting between each other. Well said. Well said. And I think I have, thank you for the super chat, Roger. No curse, let it all out. Rawr. I'll take the comment on Rockfin, Eric, thanks. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. 911, Bush gained goodwill, then lost it in Iraq. They all backed away from the U.S. So this is nothing new to them. This wasn't the first time France... Oh, you meant 9/11. Sorry. This is 911. This isn't the first time France said to the U.S., no mas. When Trump said, why we got to protect all these countries, let them arm themselves with nuclear weapons, they said, okay. Sab, the U.S. suppressed info of the Haitian slave rebellion. It's the U.S. MO. Thank you for the tip, Hemp. If you watch Robbie Martin's movie, A Very Heavy Agenda, you can see a video clip of Bill Crystal on Colbert saying how they're not really neocons anymore, but more liberal. It's in the trailer as well. They were called the crazies back in Reagan days. Ray McGovern said, Bush is cool now with Dems. Yeah, I don't understand that either, Hemcar. I haven't been able to figure that out. Identical parties funded by identical big interests. Social issues law doesn't apply to aristocrats. Thank you for this tip, JVB. On target again, Sabby. And thank you for this tip as well. Wow. Thanks, Sabby. You are right on here. Thank you for this tip as well, Hemp. Thick Not Han offers us a way out of nightmare. Dr. King Jr. Not Han was working in truth and reconciliation most his life. We need to get enough sane people concerned about their children's health. Demand people like Gates and RFK Jr. debate. John Hopkins says Sears is coming and it will kill 20 million and leave 1 billion in wheelchairs. Meet in the middle. Only liars fear debates. Interesting. And thank you for this tip, Roger. New York Governor Hochul can't shut up about protecting abortion and guns, as if abortion is in danger in New York State, weighing in on what other states are doing. Saying abortion is healthcare, yet nothing on the New York Health Act. That's a big one. That's a big one. Well said, Roger. Well said. We're going to go ahead and finish up Nebraska here. I already went through the description of how ballot initiatives work in Nebraska. I'm just going to do the other two questions, which were at the top. I started at the bottom last time. Okay, so this is Nebraska Amendment 1, authorize local governments to develop commercial air travel service amendment. A yes vote supported amending the state constitution to authorize any city, county, or other political subdivision that operates an airport to spend revenue to develop commercial air travel at the local airport. This was supported by Senators Elliot Boster and Lou Ann Linen. Also, State Representative Mike Flood. So there's bipartisan support for this one. Organizations Grow Nebraska supported this. One of the arguments is Nebraska Chamber of Commerce President Brian Sloan. These benefits will flow to urban and rural communities and can serve as valuable tools for economic development and expanding consumer choice. Our commercial air service is probably one of the most important pieces of infrastructure we absolutely have. We need to recruit 18 to 35-year-olds to live in Nebraska because we have jobs and we need them here. And you're not going to get 18 to 35-year-olds where there's no air service. If any of you watching are between the ages of 18 and 35, you want to move to Nebraska? Yay? Nay? Okay. There was no opposition for this amendment. And then the last one here is Nebraska Initiative 432, photo voter identification. Oh, I thought I did this one already. Yeah, I did do this one. I did the voter ID. Maybe there was only one more left. I'm sorry. And then I did the minimum wage. Oh, yeah. Okay, so it was only that one. Alrighty, let's go to the poll results. I did ask you guys, would you vote for RFK Jr. for president? 808. I'm gonna laugh at the number changes. Okay. Geez, what a mixed bag this is. This is different from how it was earlier. 17% of you said yes if he runs as a Democrat. 45% of you said yes only if independent or third party. 14% of you said no for Dem, Indy, or third party. And 23% of you said, dude, I have no idea. Okay. So, and I don't know if you can change your thing after you've already done it. I don't think you can actually on these polls. But I hope someone takes a screenshot of this and maybe send this to RF blah, 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 blah. Take a screenshot of this and send this to RFA. Jesus, why am I saying RFA? RFK Jr. and show this to him. Oh, the numbers are changing. Oh, it's 46% now. That the majority of you said yes if he runs as an independent or third party. Interesting. Dun, dun, dun. All right, guys, that is it for me tonight. I'm not doing call in tonight. I will do call in Thursday night instead. I actually, I've been up since 5:30 this morning. I've been going all day and I'm pretty beat actually. So I am going to chill. But other than that, guys, I hope you learned a lot tonight. I know we went over a lot of information, but pass this on to your friends. Other than that, guys, have a good night. Keep up the fight.